Can you let us know where you're joining from in the chat? You guys can start chatting, saying hey, letting us know where you're coming in from. We'll get started in about 5 minutes. Do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, welcome everyone. Hi, I'm Eves. I use they, she pronouns.
And I'm Martina. I use she, her pronouns. And we are in the newsletter working group of Survived and Punished. And we are your hosts for the evening. Tonight, we're celebrating the launch of Survived and Punished fourth newsletter, Free Survivors, and our very first podcast series that we worked on in collaboration with Audio Interference. It's called Archiving Abolition. So I'm going to share my screen really quick.
1 second, folks. So sorry to interrupt, but we do need to make the interpretation announcement.
Oh, go ahead.
So we're going to need to restart. Buenas noches a todos. Vamos a hacer el anuncio que va a ser bilingüe. So, Sayuri, ¿quieres empezar? Y después de este anuncio vamos a empezar la interpretación y Sayuri les va a explicar cómo hacer eso.
Hola a todos. El evento de día de hoy se llevará a cabo en inglés y español. En unos minutos, la función de interpretación se activará y podrá ver el icono del mundo en la parte inferior de su pantalla. Y ahí le puede hacer clic al mundo y lo llevará a la interpretación. Si está llamando desde la aplicación de su celular, va a ver 3 puntitos que dicen More o Más y ahí lo llevará a interpretación. Tiene la opción de seleccionar audio original y lo puede apagar o mantener. Por favor, todos los panelistas tengan en mente que estén hablando despacio y si hay necesidad, le mandaremos un mensaje al facilitador para que hable más lento. Y por favor, evitemos acrónimos porque no se puede interpretar directamente. Entonces, gracias. Que tengan un buen evento. Hello, everyone. Today's event will be held both in English and Spanish. In a few minutes, the interpretation will be activated and you will see a globe icon at the bottom of your screen. Click there to select your preferred language. You can also choose to maintain the audio language or turn it off. If you are calling from your cell phone and you're using the cell phone application, it will look different. You will see more, and there it will take you to the preferred language. Panelists, please keep in mind to please speak slowly, and if we are in need of someone to slow down, we will message you. And please keep in mind to avoid acronyms because sometimes they do not interpret directly the same. And thank you very much. Have a great event.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we're going to get started again. And I'm Martina. My co-host tonight is Eves. And we are in the newsletter working group of Survived and Punished. And we're your hosts for the evening. And tonight we're really excited to celebrate the launch of Survived and Punished fourth newsletter, Free Survivors, as well as our very first podcast series, which we produced in collaboration with Audio Interference, which is called Archiving Abolition. So I'm going to share my screen really quickly so you all can see what we have planned for the evening. Awesome. So this is what you can expect this evening. First, we're going to start off with a grounding statement from Tracy, and then Zoe and Celia will give us introductions into Survived and Punished and Interference Archive. Then Josh and Celia will also talk about the newsletter and the collaboration between the two organizations. Rosa and Red will lead us on a discussion on newsletter archives, and we'll also get to hear clips from the podcast series. And then Steph and Nicole will read some excerpts from the newsletter. Maureen will give us our call to action, and Lay will lead us in a Q&A before Eves and I close out for the evening. So that's what you can look forward to.
So before we finally get started, just a few housekeeping notes. This event will be recorded, and to access American Sign Language interpretation, pin the videos of Hilda and Stephanie, who have ASL interpreter included in their name. To access the Spanish interpretation, as mentioned before, click on interpretation, select the Spanish channel, and mute the original audio. Live transcription is available through Otter, and to access the transcription, click the live indicator in the upper left-hand corner of the Zoom meeting, select View Stream, and the transcript will open in a browser window. window. If you would like help navigating these features, please contact Kelly, whose number will be shared in the chat. We invite folks into the conversation and we'll be monitoring the chat, and we invite you to share thoughts, comments, and questions there all throughout the night.
Great. And questions will be answered during the Q&A segment. So you feel free to ask them throughout the evening, but that's when you'll get a chance to have those questions answered. And finally, we will provide trigger warnings throughout the event, and we will put a message in the chat to let you know when you may turn your sound back on. And now we will begin with our SMP comrade, Stacy, who will read tonight's grounding statement.
Hi, welcome everyone to the virtual launch of issue number 4 of Free Survivors, an inside and outside newsletter project from Survived and Punished New York. Thank you for sharing space with us tonight. My name's Stacy and I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a member of the Free Survivors newsletter working group. I'd like to set some intentions for us tonight to help ground the space. So we're here to build and grow abolitionist community on this side of the wall and forge and sustain community across the wall as we listen to the testimony and poetry from our friends on the inside, support them, and advocate for their release. We're here to learn how we can support our friends inside and free them all. And we're here to cultivate comradeship in the face of state violence. We know that Black, Latinx, and Native, trans, and cis women, as well as non-binary and gender non-conforming people, are the fastest growing populations in prison, all disproportionately affected by gender violence and mass incarceration. Many of these folks are immigrants and sex working or trading people. We honor their survival strategies, whatever those may be. Our editorial work exists in the tradition of past feminist anti-carceral publications like No More Cages and Through the Looking Glass that have spoken across walls that call for the total end to incarceration, and we honor that tradition tonight. Tonight, we also honor the life and memory of our dear friend, Darlene Lulu Benson Say. On April 28th, 2020, Lulu passed away from COVID-19 at 61 years old. She was the first woman to pass away from coronavirus in a New York State prison. Lulu was a beloved daughter, sister, mother, and a dear friend and comrade. At this time, I'd like us all to close our eyes if you're comfortable and share a moment of silence for Lulu. May we continue this work in her honor. Thank you for joining us tonight as we think about the legacy of abolitionist organizing and newsletter making and our collective commitment to freeing everyone from cages.
Thank you, Stacy. And now we'll give the floor to our comrades Zoe and Celia, who will introduce Survived and Punished and Audio Interference, the two organizations behind today's event.
Thank you, Yves. My name is Zoe. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a member of Survived and Punished. Survived and Punished New York, an affiliate of Survived and Punished National, is a prison abolition organization. We believe that prisons, detention centers, all forms of law enforcement, and prosecution are rooted in systems of violence, including racial, anti-trans, queer, sexual, and domestic violence. We exist to end the criminalization of survivors of domestic and sexual violence and to free all of those locked up in prisons, jails, immigration detention centers, psychiatric facilities, and in their own homes. We also focus on criminalized survivors in New York City and state, but know that our struggles here are connected to those around the country and beyond.
Thank you, Zoe. My name is Celia, pronoun she, her. I am a member of the Audio Interference Working Group and a part of Interference Archive. Interference Archive is a volunteer-run OpenStax archive of social movement material. And our work is rooted in the belief that our shared history should be held in common and accessible to all. I am not an archivist, but something that Interference Archive has taught me a lot about is sort of this idea of preservation as use, and through producing materials in common and holding them in common, and using them to inform our movements. We sort of preserve histories that otherwise are often set aside by other institutions. So thank you for coming tonight.
Great. And now we'll have Celia and Joshua speak about the collaboration between the two organizations and the newsletter.
Hi, thanks, Martina. My name is Josh. I use he, him pronouns, and I am a member of Survived and Punished. So the Free Survivors newsletter is a project of Survived and Punished New York that was started in 2018. It is a quarterly publication distributed online and in print across the walls, featuring poems, articles, artwork, and news by and about criminalized survivors and their supporters. We aim to support the expression and struggle of our comrades inside and to build community, communication, and organizing among survivors. As Stacy mentioned earlier, we seek to work within the tradition of past newsletters that have spoken across the walls, especially feminist publications like No More Cages and The Fire Inside. Our collaboration with Interference Archive emerged from reflections on what it means to inherit this legacy, to read words from survivors organizing decades ago in publications collected and saved by comrades over the years, and also from a desire to make this newsletter a gift to those who will continue this work in the future. You'll hear more about this soon, but for now, I'll just close with a quote from a piece in the latest issue of Free Survivors titled Reflections on Archiving Abolition. And this is the quote. "We want the newsletter to connect us through time, backward to the abolitionist feminists whose work we build on, and forward through the looking glass to people living in a time when there are no more cages, knowing that we are a part of the braid connecting those times, holding those relationships in our hearts, gives us hope and courage." Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. So just building a little bit on that, I'm going to speak a little bit about the partnership through audio interference. So audio interference is a project of the audio working group at the Interference Archive. We produce a podcast together and are planning a series on access, and have been thinking about what access means in different contexts. And so the etymology of access comes from Latin, ad, meaning to or towards, and sedere, meaning go and move. So then like to move towards. And abolition is in a lot of ways the work of political imagination. So thinking about the looking glass that Josh mentioned of drawing on past newsletters, abolitionist newsletters of the past, to think towards a future of no prisons. And so we at Audio Interference have been really grateful to be working with the newsletter working group, and grateful to have the opportunity to hear from voices on the inside about what they imagine they would like to see our world moving towards. We've also been thinking a little bit about access with relationship to interdependency, and have been reading a little bit of Mia Mingus. And Mia Mingus writes about her physical disability and how her physical disability makes it so that her access to spaces are dependent upon the relationships that she has. And we want to be thinking about that and want to orient our work in the audio working group, and I think also in the Interference Archive at large, towards thinking through our interdependencies and building relationships. And so it's also been pretty amazing to think about how to document the relationships that like create the foundation of inside-outside organizing. And we feel very lucky and excited to be working with you all and to be sharing these episodes tonight.
Thank you so much for that, Celia. And thank you also, Josh. And we're all very excited to have worked with you as well and proud of the work. So thank you. So now we are excited to introduce our comrades Rosa and Red, who will lead us in a discussion on the importance of archival work, as well as preview some clips of archiving abolition.
Hey y'all, welcome this evening. Rosa, do you want to introduce yourself first?
Sure. Hi everybody. My name's Rosa. I use either she or they. And I've been part of the working group within Survived and Punished New York that produces the Free Survivors newsletter since Survived and Punished New York started, which is a couple years ago now. And it's super exciting to be getting to be part of presenting both our latest newsletter issue and also this wonderful collaboration with Interference Archive, which is one of my favorite places in New York.
Thanks. Yeah, I, like Rosa, am thrilled to be here with y'all tonight in these truly wild and trying times. It's really wonderful to share space with all y'all and to have this creative outlet to think about the objects we can make to forge comradeships. So thanks for spending your evening with us tonight. My name's Red. I use they, them pronouns. And also, like Rosa, I've been a part of the newsletter working group since there was one. So really excited to still be here and to still be doing this work with y'all. As an entry point to our conversation on documenting and archiving our work and making an organizing art object like a newsletter, we wanted to invite y'all to look over the editorial note that's inside each of our issues in your own time. And that note really speaks to our collective vision and guiding principles for creating the newsletter Free Survivors. I'm going to drop that in the chat for y'all. So here's a link where you can access on our website current and past issues. And you can support our newsletter through this mechanism as well by clicking through here. But we really wanted to invite folks to spend time reading through those words about our intentions and aspirations for the newsletter. I don't think it can be overstated that writing and corresponding with and visiting and working alongside incarcerated people is necessary and crucial work for militant abolitionists to engage in. And we wanted to use this shared conversation moment to more focus on the organizing aspects and potentials for an inside-outside newsletter.
And so those aspects of the newsletter happen in a lot of different ways, which is a lot of what that editorial note talks about. So what we're going to use this bit of time for today is to touch lightly on both the legacy and impact of inside-outside newsletters, including the ones that have already been mentioned that are our inspiration, both the feminist newsletters of the past, like No More Cages, like Through the Looking Glass, and also ones that are currently active, like The Fire Inside in California, and the ones that Sylvia Rivera Law Project and the No New Jails organizing crew here in New York have put out. We'll also talk a little bit about different modes of organizing and how the newsletter work across the walls connects into them. And then the importance of preserving our radical memories, meaning the specific ones that we have, those of us in the work right now, whether folks doing the work outside or folks doing the work from inside the walls. And as we do all of that, we're going to share a few clips from the Archiving Abolition series as a taste of the wonders that are in them. So we're going to start with Will Willis. discussing a little bit of the history of abolitionist newsletters.
Thanks, y'all, for your patience while we get the sound together.
None of the work we're doing is necessarily novel. It's not something that we have to come up with from scratch. There are strong traditions there of abolitionist print culture, and so these newsletters that I mentioned offered folks on the inside an avenue to resist this condition of state-enforced isolation. It's a matter of circulating information and fostering relationships that challenge the isolation.
So as Will was saying, one of the things that we draw on with Free Survivors is the particular history of newsletters from the 70s and 80s that were specifically developed by feminist projects outside the walls to create and develop close relationships with imprisoned women, both trans and cis, in that period. And those newsletters really created the model that we work in, and also a lot of the models of inside-outside organizing that that have been available and been used ever since, by bridging the gaps between survivors inside, survivors outside, and advocates and allies. So today, there are groups like the California Coalition of Women Prisoners, who put out The Fire Inside. There's Critical Resistance, and then here in New York, No New Jail, Sylvia Rivera Law Project, who carry on these traditions of inside-outside newsletters. And the difference in what we've been doing at Survive and Punish New York is not a difference in the style of the organizing, but that we're specifically focusing on criminalized survivors, both in the voices inside and outside, who we're specifically trying to uplift and specifically trying to build connections among. And that's an outgrowth of Survive and Punished's organizing focus as part of the broad abolitionist movement, but as the piece that specifically focuses on survivors of gendered violence and how criminalization is applied as we build a movement across prison walls.
And for folks who aren't familiar with one of our main sources of inspiration for Free Survivors, the newsletter, we wanted to share a little bit more about this newsletter that we keep referring to, No More Cages. So I wanted to just kind of give folks a little bit more introduction to what No More Cages is and was as a newsletter, and why it's such a source of inspiration for us. No More Cages was a newsletter focused on women in prisons and jails and psychiatric institutions. It was published with the intention of providing a forum through which incarcerated women could speak and coalition build. Outside prison groups could find one another and unite. And also others could familiarize themselves with the struggles of women behind bars and learn how to organize around and support them. Articles on incarcerated members of the Palestinian women's movement, capital punishment in the South, and activism supporting decriminalization and the civil rights of sex working people in Canada and San Francisco were featured within its pages. It also included information on specific cases. It was a Freudian slip, but it did talk about the specific manners of caging that these folks were enduring, right, in the prison conditions that these folks faced. It also talked extensively on the financial exploitation of persons who were diagnosed with what were called psychiatric illnesses, and the relationship of the military-industrial complex to prisons. And so this comes from a little bit of an background or comprehensive history on No More Cages, and I'm going to drop this link in the chat so that you can look at a few of these issues as they are archived online. So I'm going to drop that there for folks. So you'll see this text that I was referring to in the introductory remarks in the link that I just shared. So why look at these things? Why look at historical examples? Why draw inspiration from past newsletters that are not necessarily continued to be published? I think as Rosa was talking about, and as our comrade William was talking about in that audio clip, it's about situating our politics and our practices in the legacy and tradition of this work, right? Both acknowledging that we come from a long legacy of folks doing this work, primarily Black and Brown femmes and women, folks who have experience in the carceral system, and folks who have been doing gender-based organizing around survival, whether it be folks advocating for sex workers' rights and those experiencing violence in the trade, whether it be issues around non-carceral organizing around domestic violence. And this stuff, it's so amazing, y'all, when you look at these issues of No More Cages, how much of this material, there's such a through line, there's such a really intense and such amazing lessons to be gleaned from these things. And so we wanted to start from that moment, right? Because we believe truly that we should be writing our own accounts of our work and preserving our understanding of it. We don't think that we can wait for others to do this writing or this work for us, nor can we always trust accounts written by folks outside of our movement spaces, right? This gives us an opportunity to clarify our own principles, right? And lessons learned when we do this necessary reflecting and documenting work. So we just wanted to kind of bring a little bit of that into this space as well. And I think our next clip is going to be coming from one of our dear comrades, Alicia Walker. So as we're talking about naming and writing our own stories and being able to kind of step into write our own collective power and taking our narratives back, right? And documenting our struggle. This clip from Lili is going to be talking a little bit about or can serve as a model for the kind of inside-outside work that folks do when they share their stories, both of survival, but also of resistance. So we're going to have this clip shared now. So just wait for that audio.
Here's Red Schulte reading Alicia Walker's responses, written in May 2020.
Listen to us. Solidarity comes from building relationships, connecting with other advocates, and the drive to keep fighting and not give up. I'd say to be effective, you must stay connected at all costs. Letter writing campaigns need to be responsive to our needs. The newsletters let me know what's going on outside. This organizing news is so crucial. Getting report backs on actions and campaigns, it keeps us all going.
So those were Alicia's words that I was reading as she was talking about what kind of communication methods and what roles the newsletter plays in her own inside organizing. So as we move into thinking then about intervening in the archive, right? What does that mean? As we talk about documenting our radical memory and thinking about Alicia's words and the kind of importance that she places on the newsletter, right? For us, we always want to be thinking toward future organizers and comrades as we make resources in the now, right? So we always want to have that mind toward who will be using these things, who will be drawing upon these things, just as we are ourselves drawing upon through the Looking Glass, No More Cages, The Fire Inside, etc. And so I just wanted to share the example of Emily Thuma, who wrote All Our Trials. At the launch event for her book, Emily was talking about, doing this research, tracking down the comrades who put together these brilliant organizing documents. It was incredibly difficult because it was so hard to have accounts of people's names and organizations all the time, because everything was just so shared in common, which is both beautiful and frustrating when you can't find connections to folks and give credit right where credit is due when people are making things like these art and organizing objects. So we want to be accountable to the movement's memory as well, in naming that we're doing this work.
And that's shaped decisions that we've made within the newsletter working group to start including our names in the issues of the newsletter, which we didn't do at first, partly because having followed the practice that we had seen, not just in No More Cages, but also generally in a lot of feminist and abolitionist work, of preferring not to do things with our individual names on it when we're working collectively. Having heard from Emily that the book that was connecting us back to this lineage had been harder to research and harder to write, even after only 40 years. Because of that practice, we decided that we needed to stop doing that and not be making our future comrades' lives difficult. Despite that, though, we have in the time that we've put out this newsletter, been able to connect with one of the No More Cages collective members, Shotzi, who is still around, is still active, organizes with Jewish Voice for Peace New York, and who has come to one of our issue launch events, or letter writings, I can't remember which now, and is a lovely connection to have in the flesh as well as on paper. And we've also, of course, been able to read the words that the creators of these newsletters, both inside and outside, put in them, in places like Interference, in places like the Barnard Center for the Research on Women archive, and then, of course, in Emily Thuma's book, which I'm just going to say a tiny bit more about because it's such a wonderful resource for folks doing work in these abolitionist feminist lineages. So the book is a book about the ways that during the 70s, grassroots women activists inside and outside of prisons forged a politics against both gender violence and incarceration. It explores basically the history that carceral feminist accounts tell us doesn't exist, by telling us that what we're doing now is new. And she documents and describes the histories of mass defense campaigns, of prisoner uprisings, of broad local coalitions, of national gatherings, and the print cultures that worked across the walls to show the ways that for as long as there has been carceral feminism, there have been feminist abolitionist critiques of it and alternatives to it. It's always been a choice which side of that line to be on in our work. And one of the things that we're trying to do in that lineage is also to make the histories of that lineage part of our work, not just in events like this that are accessible to folks outside, but also by making copies of Emily's book and other abolitionist books available to our inside comrades, and to ask comrades on the inside who are interested to write reviews and write responses to that work. So in our current issue 4 that we're just now releasing, we have a review by Jessica Paradiso of All Our Trials, Emily Thuma's book, which is wonderful to have as a knitting back and forth, specifically also in the relationships between New York City organizers on the outside and folks who are at Bedford Hills in particular, where so many of our comrades are, and where so many of the people who were writing in No More Cages and so on are. So yeah, so this process of building community and comradeship across the walls is also something that Red was pointing out when we were talking about what we wanted to be presenting today, also happens through the medium of newsletters between comrades inside the walls.
That's absolutely right. And so I wanted to just bring up a couple of things that newsletters also clarify as a way to kind of round out this conversation moment that Rosa and I are having. Amongst also demonstrating the kinds of, and the need to acknowledge the different kinds of organizing, mutual aid, and political work that folks are doing inside and outside, right? That often gets brought up within the pages of our newsletters and newsletters of the past, right? There are also these moments of building comradeship through the newsletter. And so these newsletters facilitate conversations among folks inside that would otherwise be blocked or considered contraband, right? So this kind of direct communication that is so disallowed and is so punished, right, inside can be, right, kind of this workaround exists in the newsletter in which people can write into the newsletter and have debate, conversation. We see this time and time again in newsletters of the past. And so that's something that we're really invested in trying to cultivate and support with Free Survivors, as well as it continues to develop as a newsletter. And also communication with folks outside, right? And so clarifying politics and organizing amongst folks who are inside, talking to those who are outside. Often communication is blocked. So many of us on this call have friends, lovers, comrades, family, right? Both biological and chosen, right? Who are kept from us by the state. And the violence of the state, one of the ways that it is visited upon us is the incredible financial burden of prison technology communication, right? The ridiculous, arbitrary evil of the policies, right? And how those dictate the kind of conversations we can have, right? So we're very, very used to having coded and having, you know, all kinds of code switching in our conversations all the time, right? And newsletters can facilitate a different kind of communication. And so they exist to have debates, discussions, clarifying organizing work, giving report back, sharing art and poetry. And they do these things. I wanted to invite Rosa to talk a little bit about some of the debates, though, because this is such an interesting moment to talk about the through line of looking to the archive, looking to these past issues like No More Cages, and seeing the potential for the politics in the now.
Sure. So two of the debates that were, well, one thing that was an active debate in the pages of No More Cages, the issues that we were looking at as working group, was about the question of administrative segregation versus general population presence for folks who had a history of harming children or other very vulnerable people. And there's, in No More Cages, there's an incredibly thoughtful and complicated discussion among folks inside, working through their feelings about organizing alongside someone who they were inside with, who had done something particularly awful, and what it would mean in either direction to either go along with prison policy of segregation for that person, of increasing their isolation, increasing the level of violence put on them, versus advocating for that person to stay in the general population, which also could put that person's own safety at risk. And seeing that the subtlety, the complexity of that conversation, and the space that it was able to happen in, that it couldn't have happened in any other forum because of the denial of communication between people held in different cages and the difficulties of communication among people inside, not to mention across one wall, was incredibly inspiring, and also incredible to see folks wrestling with these questions that are very much still live and present in our work, and go really directly to a lot of the different aspects of abolitionist politics and what it is to think about ways of transforming harm and ways of addressing harm that don't triangulate through a punishment system. And what does it mean to even try to hold that question from the inside of that punishment system? So that's one inspiration and one example of the power of the communication across two walls that newsletters have done and that we hope Free Survivors can do. And then another, which is a very different kind of thing, is just the ways that No More Cages in particular, just because it's the example that I and we have read the most of, contains the fullness of organizing spaces, of movements, of different political flavors that at different times look like they're in total harmony and look like they're in total opposition. And what it does to look back over 30, 40 years to see the very different landscape that happens from a project that's committed to having a lot of different flavors of its movements present. So over the course of a couple issues of No More Cages, there's a number of reports about the conditions that a trans woman comrade inside is facing, and a lot of different kinds of expressions of support, of testimony about that particular situation. There's a couple of different accounts from different places of sex worker organizing. And there's an account from a group of, in the language that they use to identify themselves, in that point, third world women, talking about militant actions shooting up porn shops. This is in the period where folks who were part of an armed organization called Direct Action also had carried out firebombing actions against shops in a particular porn store chain in the Northwest. We would now, after the sex wars of the late 80s into the 90s, think of actions targeting even the most corporate of porn businesses as decidedly at odds and in opposition to sex worker organizing or trans feminist organizing. And the fact that all of that is coexisting in the space of the newsletter does something to, for me, and I would hope for a lot of us, to the ways that it's easy to project back our current political moments and the oppositions and divisions that we see into them onto earlier ones, and also to being able to even put in question, like, what are the divisions and intense oppositions that we're not seeing on those pages, because we're looking at them with the lens of our current political landscape. And that, to me, is a huge part of what it means for us to be giving our understandings of the work we're doing and making space for ourselves and our comrades on both sides of so many walls to be presenting our understandings of the work we're doing, of where we sit, of the landscapes that we're organizing in, which I really hope that Free Survivors can continue to be a space that does, and that the Archiving Abolition series then has now gotten to expand through a whole nother medium by putting even more of people's either literal voices or voices on paper then translated into sound.
I think that's such a beautiful segue and transition moment into the next clip, our final clip that we're going to be sharing at this point in our event this evening, which features Jessica Paradiso and Annette Farrell, who are answering the question that was posed to them for these interviews: what would you like to see our world moving towards? So if we think back to what Celia was introducing to us earlier this evening, this question of moving towards, right? And so we can play this next clip, these next clips now of Jessica and Annette's.
Where I would like to see the world after all of this virus is where I would like to see it after all other viruses: crime, poverty, domestic violence, and hurt, is to be more considerate, to not take even the littlest thing for granted because you don't know if tomorrow is guaranteed.
I would love to see the world moving towards equality, positivity, peace, and embracing the reason why history was made to set an example. What prevents these movements from occurring is sexism, racism, prejudice, ignorance, and selfishness against each other, because we refuse to put our thoughts together and make positive change and less negative judgment. Focus by building one another and helping one grow instead of looking down on others to make it seem as if you are bigger. Thank you.
We'll turn things back over to our hosts for this evening, Martina and Yves.
Thank you so much, Red and Rosa, for all of that. And I hope you all enjoyed a couple of clips from the podcast. Tonight, we're also celebrating the launch of our 4th issue of the newsletter, Free Survivors. Inside, you'll find many moving poems from our comrades who are also criminalized survivors, original movement art. And our comrades Steph and Nicole are here today to read some of those poems from the newsletter for us. And we will also be giving you trigger warnings before some of those poems, so please listen out for that as well.
Hey everybody, I'm Steph, she, they pronouns. I'm a newer member of Survived and Punished New York. Very happy to be in community with y'all. So for these next couple of poems, I do want to say that there's a trigger warning for violence. So if you want to take a couple of seconds to mute or lower your volume, I will signal when I'm done. Thanks so much. First poem is Don't Want to Lose by Annette Farrell. Trees lose leaves, but when summer come, they'll win. I've lost hope, and it seems to never end, no matter the season, but I don't want to lose my children. That forces humanity to be lost. I don't want to lose, but we live to die. Cops are killing youth. Pull over, they shoot. Pow. No time served. I won't lose, but live to fight another day. When death reaches me, I will have a legacy that lives on. But I feel as if I'm already gone. So much pain inside. As my heart scream loud cries, I won't and can't lose. Fighting for my youth and new generation repeated in my head. Till the day God decide it's time to take me away, I won't lose. What I Need by Reverend Joy Powell is the next one. This is an excerpt. I don't need police to kneel with me. I need you to get off our necks. The Black and Latino lives are devalued and they refuse to protect or correct. It's not a figment of my imagination. Why do they want me to forget? I picture George Floyd that day with the officer's knee on his neck. It has me disgusted and totally vexed. We're pushed to bring and forced to protest. It's really happening. It's called civil unrest. I don't need to convince or justify your lies of why you choose not to socialize. If it doesn't apply, then let it fly. I need you to know that I will rise, rise, rise. Can't you hear the mothers, fathers, and children's cries? Innocent people of color on death row waiting to fry. Why? Well, you need to know if I've paid the ultimate price with my life as an anti-violence activist against violence and police brutality and government corruption. The voices are sounding all over the world like a volcano eruption. Now, do you hear us? Are you taking the Black life serious? Some have lost it and become delirious. I visualize George Floyd handcuffed to the back of the cold ground. He pleads, please get your knee off my neck. I can't breathe. Repeated history in the 21st century. PTSD, it's hard to erase our memories. Thank you.
Hi all, I'm Nicole. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a member of the newsletter working group. This is a poem written by Jacqueline Smalls in tribute to Darlene. To my loving friend, Darlene. This is about one of your favorite hobbies, the hand that God dealt. Darlene, I heard that you were playing cards with God, and he dealt you the best hand that anyone could ever dealt you. God dealt you the big joker and the little joker, the deuce of diamond and the deuce of spades. Those are the highest winning cards to set you free from all the pain and suffering that you endured. Now you can say, thank you, God, for dealing me the winning hand that took me home, because now my spirit is free, free, free. Love, Miss Smalls. This next poem is by Tamara McCoy. Bedford Hills, Bedford sits still. Bedford done deals, Bedford feels, Bedford unreal, Bedford appeals, Bedford conceals, Bedford steals, Bedford kills. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you, Steph and Nicole. We have a number of ongoing campaigns and upcoming events and opportunities for folks to get involved. So we have our comrade Maureen here to share them with you.
Okay. On October 5th, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, okay, sure. On October 5th from 6 to 7 p.m., there is a fundraiser and a political education event called it's Stand With Tracy, Black Survivors and Caregivers Resisting Criminalization. And I'm just going to say that this is put on by Tracy's, the surviving Tracy's family and the Survived and Punished Defense Committee, and supporting Tracy McCarter up and uplifting Black criminalized survivors and their caregivers' resistance against their criminalization, and embedded trans misogynoir and reproductive justice they face. Some of the speakers are going to be, we hope, Tracy, who on September 24th was released from prison because of the good work of her tenacious family and the Survived and Punished Defense Committee supporting her. So the speakers are going to be Dorothy Roberts, Ashley Sawyer, and Andrea James, who are really like amazing speakers. So for people who don't know, Tracy McCarter in March was arrested and put in jail after accidentally stabbing and killing her ex-partner who came to her home. He repeatedly had abused her in the past and abused her that day. And she was put in Rikers. They were refusing to give her bail. Finally, through her defense committee, she was given bail and released on September 24th, but she was put on electronic monitoring. Her charges are still not being released, so we want her charges to be released. And of course, we don't think anyone should be on electronic monitoring. And I want to really, in terms of looking at the work of, I want to just say we're living in hard times right now where sometimes we feel hopeless. So I want to say this was a small win, but it is a win by the Defense Committee to get her released after repeated refusals of the DA and the people, the judges to grant her bail, to allow her to be released. So I think that's a big win that she was released on September 24th. Big praise for everyone who worked on that. And let's continue to drop all the charges and no electronic monitoring for Tracy McCarter. And big compliments again to Tracy's courageous and tenacious family who are part of this defense committee. So then from September 29th until October 13th, Critical Resistance, along with Artsy New York, with many sponsors, including Survived and Punished, are having an online event. It's called Imagine Freedom Artworks for Abolition. And it is an online art auction, programs and performances and discussions uplifting arts in movements for liberation. It's going to advance strategic grassroots organizing and cultural work against jail expansion and police violence, especially in areas of LA, the Bay Area, Portland, and New York, and amplifying as we resist the dreams we have for our future through arts and culture. So go to access these live events. You could go to Artsy New York or artsy.net /critical resistance. And you can also go to Imagine Freedom Artworks. You just put in Imagine Freedom Artworks and for Abolition, and if that will come up, a website will come up. And go to, especially for the discussions, the ongoing talks, go to the Facebook page of Critical Resistance, and you could follow it. there on the 13th, that is the live auction, but there's ongoing discussions. You can buy things right now online, and you'll be benefiting the great work of Critical Resistance. So, and the work to, ongoing abolition work. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you so much, Maureen. So if you have any questions about anything about our work or about the podcast or the newsletter, you can go ahead and drop them in the chat, and we'll open it up for questions now, and Lei will moderate the Q&A.
Hello. It's nice to see everyone. So yeah, wanted to give us all some space to process everything. And if you do have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, or just unmute yourself and shout out. That's okay too. And yeah, I'm just gonna take some deep breaths. So yeah, for the podcast link, you can find it. Thank yous. It's at audiointerference.org. And in a moment, I'm gonna do a walkthrough of how to navigate both that site and the Free Survivors site on survivedandpunishedny.org. It's a good question about if someone wants to write letters to women in prison, how one can do that. So there's a few ways. The first way is that Survived and Punished has periodic letter writing parties. We usually do them at least 3 or 4 times a year. So if you kind of check out our events page, there will be ones coming up that you can join and attend, similar to this, at a Zoom meeting with dozens of other people who are writing to women inside, cis and trans women and gender nonconforming folks. And in addition, you can also write them yourselves or start your own kind of letter writing group or party. There's resources on the Survived and Punished, not New York, but .org, which is linked in the chat, national site that gives you kind of the mailing address for a number of criminalized survivors that we're in contact with and who have asked for letters. So they're always super appreciative when they get letters and postcards, even from folks who don't give them return addresses, just to know that there's people supporting them on the outside. We always get a lot of feedback that that's just a beautiful thing.
Oh, could I just say something quickly about the Stand With Tracy event on October 5th? There is a RSVP, an Eventbrite. I didn't put it there, but if you go to our Twitter page, I'm sure we'll eventually I'm not sure we tweeted it yet, but you could fill out the Eventbrite for the Stand With Tracy event on October 5th.
While we're still in this space too, I want to take a second to thank all the criminalized survivors who participated in the podcast. They did so at personal risk to themselves, because we have had comrades who have been retaliated against for participating in Survived and Punished actions. But I really want to thank EVA De Molina, Sasi, Annie Farrell, Jessica Paradiso, Alicia Lily Walker, and Andrea Benson. They're all such wonderful people, and I'm so thankful that they agreed to participate in this project with us.
Thanks, Lei. So Lei, before we sign off, can you show us how to access the newsletter on this Survived and Punished website and how to listen to Archiving Abolition?
Yes, thank you. Let me try to share my screen. Bear with me. Okay, can folks see my screen? Cool. So this is the homepage for survivedandpunishedny.org. As you can see, we have a number of working groups that are kind of listed at the top here, mass commutations, mutual aid. And the third one from the center is the newsletter page. And if you click on newsletter, it will take you to our landing page for free survivors. And on this first page, it gives a little bit of history about our particular newsletter, as well as kind of our purpose for being an inside-outside newsletter. It's a very particular thing to produce something that's meant to go both inside prison walls and outside. And it's also very important to us to make sure that this is available in both print and digital editions. At the bottom of this page, you will also have buttons where you can donate to the newsletter fund and also see current and archived issues of the newsletter. And when you go to the newsletter button, you also see a drop-down menu where you can click on the newsletter store. And that's where you're going to want to click on if you're interested in purchasing newsletters. So once you get to this page and it loads, because it's a lot of information for our small site, you'll see all of our most current issue at front and center, issue 4 that just got released. If you click on the title of it, you can download the PDF for free. And you can feel free to print them out if you want, mail them to folks. We want to make it as accessible as possible. And to this panel here, to the right or left, one of them, it says past issues. And you can also download any of our past issues in our archive. So we have 4 total. If you continue scrolling down, you'll see a description of our newsletter pricing. So basically, we want to make the newsletter free to anyone who's incarcerated inside, all criminalized survivors. So if you know someone and you want them to get a newsletter, we can mail it to them for free. You just have to click on this little button and fill out a quick form, and we'll send them our next issues, and we'll continue sending them as long as we're operating. And it also has a breakdown of the single issues. You can purchase one singular issue, say if you want issue 4. And you can also sign up for a yearly subscription, either as an individual, which is $20, or as an institution. If you have a little more funds, you can sign up for one for $50 a year. And all of that money goes into helping to keep us running and printing the issues and sending them inside for free. And if you continue scrolling, you kind of get a better picture of where you sign up for those. And it just asks for basically name, address, email. And then when you click buy now, it'll take you to PayPal so that you can purchase them. So that is how you would get a copy of Free Survivors. And for the podcast, you're going to go, let's see if I can find this little tab. You're going to go to audiointerference.org, and it will redirect you to this beautiful page, which has all of Audio Interference's episodes, which you can listen for free on this site. And all the ones that were done in collaboration with Survived and Punished are at the top of the page, episode 77.1.2, etc. And we chose to break them down into mini episodes, which features an interview with an individual criminalized survivor, as well as one of the episodes, I believe episode 1, which is with 2 of our outside organizers, Maureen and William, giving some more context for Survived and Punished's work. And the last episode, which is features a song by 2 of our 2 criminalized survivors that we work with, EVA and Sasi. And that's how you can access the Audio Interference podcast. Yeah, thank you. I'll hand it back over to you, Martina.
Thanks, Lay. You can also listen to Archiving Abolition podcast series on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and SoundCloud by searching Audio Interference.
Thank you, everyone, for being here with us and spending your evening with us, honoring the memories of our loved ones and also honoring our comrades who are still inside and fighting. Please try and come to our other events if you can. If you want to get involved in letter writing, we have an upcoming letter writing event that we spoke about. And also the Resisting Criminalization and Black Caregivers event for Stand With Tracy is also an ongoing fundraiser for Tracy's defense campaign and along with other criminalized survivors. So when you go onto the Eventbrite, there is an option to buy a ticket or to donate money. And if you're able to do that, we are extremely thankful for that. And also, don't forget, follow SNP on Twitter at Survive Punish New York on Twitter. And once again, thank you so much for spending your evening with us during these very rough times. We are really thankful to share space with everyone here and to be able to share this podcast and our newsletter with everyone.
Yes, thank you, everyone. And really quickly wanted to shout out the Interference Archive Twitter as well, Interference ARC. Make sure to follow both works. Thank you.